Welcome to Power Lunch Live on LinkedIn. I'm Rhett Power, your host. We do this program every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and a lot of Fridays. And we'll do a show. We will do a show this Friday. We do it at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time on LinkedIn's not so new live platform now, almost a year old, coming up here in a couple months. The point of the show is to talk to today's leaders, thought leaders, CEOs, authors about what they do that can help us be better. Things that they do every day in their lives that make them who they are, so that maybe we can learn a little from them about their success and how they do it. That's the whole point of the show. Now, the fun part about the show is that it's interactive, and the way that happens is if you ask questions. And I want to say, hey, thank you, Patricia, for tuning in and commenting already here before we even get started. Appreciate that. Now, follow Patricia's lead and ask your questions, make your comments so that we can get to the questions that you want answered. Now, we are broadcasting on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, I think Twitch even, and aside from LinkedIn. So you can ask your questions on any of those platforms. We'll try to get to them during the program. If not, we'll certainly do it afterwards. Now, if you like the program, give it a like or share so that your network can benefit and we can grow our audience. Two big benefits of you liking and sharing. Now, today is going to be a fun conversation. I've got Ruth Soukup. She's a New York Times bestselling author, and I probably killed the name.
Okay.
I have trouble with the English language. Anyway, she's a New York Times bestselling author. She's the bestselling author, a speaker, entrepreneur. She's got 6 best-selling books. The ones you probably know are Living Well, Spending Less, and Do It Scared, which is her newest book. She's the host of the Do It Scared podcast and the wildly popular Ruth Soukup weekly newsletter that reaches over.
Yeah, we'll just get that right there.
Let's get that right. That reaches more than 1 million people weekly. Ruth, welcome to the show. I can do Ruth. Ruth is good.
Ruth is the easy part. Yeah. Fun fact, my parents, there's 5 of us siblings, and we all have four-letter biblical names that my parents were very adamant that we would have very easy names. And then I married my husband and got a not so easy last name.
Fair enough. People get my name wrong all the time. So I'm surprised. Anyway, well, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm so great to be here today.
Well, let me ask you this. Your story is fascinating. Your TED Talk and some of your backstory that I've read and heard is just this incredible journey. I mean, you talked about where at some point when you're 23, I think you said you thought your life was over, right? Yeah. Yet you've gone on to build this incredible influencer sort of platform with amazing content that helps millions of people. Can you talk about that journey a little bit? Because I think it's really important.
Yeah. So like you said, at 23, I was pretty sure I had completely messed up my life, like forever, that there was no redemption possible from where I was at that point. I had just spent the last 2.5 years in and out of psychiatric hospitals. I had attempted suicide 5 times. The worst of which ended me on life support in a coma with less than a 10% chance of waking up. My heart actually stopped in the ambulance. The fireman broke down my door, like as dramatic as you can imagine. It was that dramatic. And it was only a miracle that I survived. Ended up divorced. I dropped out of college, lost all my friends and family along the way, because in the midst of all of this depression, I'd get out of the hospital and I'd go just do stupid and crazy, really dangerous and really self-destructive stuff. I was a cutter, so I cut my arms and legs. And when that didn't feel like enough, I started burning as well. So my arms and legs were covered with scars. I mean, I had shaved up all my hair, dyed it bright red. I had a nose ring. I had a lip ring. I didn't look like I look now. I looked like a mess, and I was a mess. And I really got to a point at the end of that 2.5 years where they finally resorted to electroshock therapy in the psychiatric hospital. I was in 6 different hospitals over the course of 2.5 years. And electroshock therapy, most people don't even know they do that anymore. It is a last resort. And after 6 weeks of that, they finally sent me home and said, you know what, we don't know what else to do for you anymore. And basically sent me home to die. So there I was at my dad's house, and where he didn't even really want me at that point, but he also, he's my dad. He wasn't going to turn me away, and literally just laid in bed pretty much every day. Couldn't even get out of bed, and had nothing left. And that was really the rock bottom moment for me, where I was like, I'm 23 and I have nothing. I have no friends. I have no husband. I have no degree. I have no job. I've got literally nothing. And I look like hell too. So, after a couple months of laying in bed, my dad finally couldn't take it anymore. And he begged and pleaded with me and kind of bribed me to at least just start going to the gym. He's like, please just go like 3 times a week. If you go 3 times a week, you can still stay here. Just walk on the treadmill for half an hour, 3 times a week. So I started doing that. And then I would go straight back to bed. But after a couple of months, I think it gave me just enough of something that I thought maybe there's still something out there. I wasn't sure. I didn't know. But I opened up the phone book and just like basically picked a psychiatrist and called and said, I've spent the last 2.5 years talking about every bad thing that's ever happened to me, and it hasn't helped, and I'm not better. And I don't want to talk about all the crap anymore. Cause I had one of my diagnoses was post-traumatic stress disorder. I was abused as a kid. Like there was some stuff there. Sure. But so I just said, I just need to know now how to live, because I don't even know that anymore. I don't know how to get out of bed. And that's what I need help with. And that's what I did for the next 2.5 years after that with this therapist. I started seeing her 3 times a week, and that went down eventually to 2 times a week, and then one time a week. And it was literally the simplest stuff, like learning how to go to a grocery store and not have a panic attack. And just putting one foot in front of the other, getting a job, finishing my degree, getting a full-time job, getting my own apartment, becoming a self-sufficient member of society.
Building that confidence though, all the time.
Building, and every step along the way, every tiny thing that I did built up the next like piece of confidence for me to start doing the next thing and the next thing. Cause it was terrifying. It was terrifying to feel like there was no hope. I mean, hopelessness is the most terrifying feeling in the world. And so at that point in my life, that's where I sort of came up with this mantra, do it scared. That's what she would tell me, just do it scared. Even if you're terrified, just do it. Keep trying. You got to keep doing these tiny little things. And, eventually I did get better. I went back to school, finished my degree, met the man who would become my husband, started law school, dropped out of law school, had a couple of kids, had like all these different things. And then, fast forward about 6 years, I ended up starting a business, sort of inadvertently starting a business, an online business. I started by writing a blog, and right away discovered there was kind of this whole world of online business and online marketing, that people were earning a full-time living doing this blogging thing. And decided I was a mom of 1 and a 3-year-old, and said, you know what, I think I can do this too. I'm gonna make enough money from my blog that my husband can quit his job. And that was 2010, and it took me 3 years to get to that point. But in 2013, he was able to leave his job as an aerospace engineer and to become the stay-at-home dad. And then I've been building the business ever since. So that is the very abbreviated version.
Is the writing and the creating that content, is it cathartic for you, or how does it help you?
How does the writing help me?
How does that?
I think what I love about being a writer is that it always gives me the perspective. Anytime something is happening to me or happening in my life, I feel like I always view it from almost like a third party perspective, because I think, oh my gosh, this is going to be such a great story to write about. Like it almost makes hard things easier to handle and to deal with, because it gives you a little bit of perspective where you can go, you know what? This might suck for me right now, but it is also I know there's a lesson in here somewhere that's going to help me and it's going to help other people. And so I think it's taken a long time to get that kind of perspective of being a writer for a really long time, to get that kind of perspective on life and challenges and all of that stuff. But I also know based on everything that I've been through in my life and coming through the other side of just a devastating depression and complete mental breakdown, is realizing that no matter how bad things get, there's always redemption. There's always something more that's out there. If you can just keep going, if you can just keep putting one foot in front of the other, you will make it to something better. And there, no matter how badly you've screwed up, no matter how much you've made a mess out of things, there is always the ability to come back from that.
People love that, don't they? Though? They love a redemption story.
Oh, there is no story but redemption. I mean, that is every story at the end of the day.
Are you surprised? Have you been surprised by the response that to your stuff, to your content, to your material, to your writing?
I guess I don't really give that much thought. I think I spend a lot of my time focused on who am I talking to and what do they need and what are the problems that I can help solve. And I feel like every life experience I have has led to that ability to relate to other people and understand their pain and their struggles and know how to speak to that, because not only have I had experience with a lot of pain and a lot of struggle and different things in my life, I also have experience in pushing past it and overcoming and setting goals and doing big things in my life. And so I think I can very much speak to both sides, where I have the empathy for what it feels like to be in that situation, but I also have kind of the tough love approach of like, okay, now you got to do something about it. Like, you don't have to sit there and let this be your life. So I think I'm so busy focusing on helping people get there that I don't really think about, like, is it crazy that there's, all these people that are subscribing and listening and paying attention? Because you can't really think about it from that perspective. It's like, I love talking to people one-on-one and finding out, hearing other people's stories. It's one of the best parts. I don't know if you feel that way about the show, but I feel like listening to people's stories is one of the best things about doing a podcast. I just love digging in with people and hearing their stories and finding out what makes them tick, because I think that just allows us to have this shared human experience that makes everything richer.
Well, and adulthood is hard, and so anybody that can help you figure it out is it's important, because
that's very true.
I think your advice is often it's pretty spot on. How did you? Because a lot of people have tried to figure out blogging and building content and how did you? How did you figure out what your audience? Because I know you've really, really narrowed down in on your audience and you know exactly who that is. I think a lot of people who are trying to do what you've done really struggle there, and maybe try to struggle on how to build that side of the business, right? Great content, but struggle on the building the audience side.
Right.
How did you figure all that out? How did you build this?
A lot of trial and error, honestly, truly. I started in 2010, not having any idea what I was doing. I had no idea how to blog, how to grow an audience. I had never read blogs before, but as soon as I sort of started diving into this world, it opened up this whole idea like, oh my gosh, there's a whole community out there. There's people that are reading blogs. There's people that are making money doing this thing. And I wanted to find out everything I possibly could about how to grow it, how to monetize it, how to turn this passion I had for writing into something that could actually provide a sustainable income for my family. And it was not easy. I started reading everything I possibly could about how to make money blogging. And in 2010, there wasn't a lot of information out there about it. Right. So the first thing I started reading about was SEO and search engine optimization and how you optimize. And I started doing that for every single blog post that I wrote. I would I would completely optimize it for search engine results. And at the time when I started, my original blog was called Living Well, Spending Less. And it was all about my own personal journey of trying to live well on a budget. You know, this mom of 2 toddlers trying to go to the grocery store and save money with coupons. And, you know, this was kind of right after the financial crash. So a lot of people were doing things a lot more frugally. And that was a big thing. And so I started writing about everything I was learning. And one of the things I learned about myself very quickly is that I'm very good at teaching people how to do things step by step. My brain is one of those brains that I can take in a lot of information and then I can instantly break it down into, okay, if you want to duplicate these results, you do this and this and this and this and this. And so with couponing was kind of the first thing that just worked with me. There was this whole idea that you do this extreme couponing and you can save all this money at the grocery store. So I made videos. I'd go to the grocery store and I'd, get $200 worth of groceries for 25 cents or some crazy thing like that. And so I had maybe 4 or 5 friends who were reading my blog and asking me, hey, Ruth, how are you doing this? Like, you're showing us what you're getting, but how are you doing this? So I wrote this guide. I called it the Beginner's Guide to Coupons, and it was an 8-part series. And all the things that I was learning about SEO, I was applying those to, behind the scenes, doing all the metadata and all the stuff that you have to do for SEO. Right. And it was really well optimized. Well, not that many people were searching for how to use coupons, so it didn't really matter until the show Extreme Couponing came out on TLC, which I don't know if you remember that. It came out in early 2011. It was a show on the TLC network. It was called Extreme Couponing. It was very popular. And all of a sudden, everybody was searching for coupons. It went from 0 to everybody. And guess who had optimized my site for couponing? Me. Yeah, I showed up actually before the show when people searched Extreme Couponing. So that was the first moment where I was like, oh, this actually worked. And I tried this thing and I put all this work in for 6 months, got no results. And then boom, you have this moment and that's pretty much business in a nutshell right there.
Yeah, right.
You're doing all the work. And then you have this what looks like to the outside, this overnight success, but it's actually just the culmination of all this work that you were doing in the background. And so that was the first moment. And then the Extreme Couponing came and went, that craze came and went, and I kind of had to learn how to ride the next wave. But that was it. It was just learning, reading, applying, trying, failing, trying, succeeding, trying to do more of that. And that, I feel like that's kind of what entrepreneurship is.
That's it right there in a nutshell. You even wrote a book about that, though, right? About how
I did. It's this one, How to Blog for
Profit. I love it.
Yeah, I just actually updated this for 2020, which makes me very excited. This is my best-selling book. I have 6 books. This is my best-selling book. It sold almost 500,000 copies, if you can believe that. It's crazy. It was an accidental book. It was one of those books where people, after my husband retired in 2013, I had all these readers and friends who were asking, okay, now start telling us about what you're doing, because my blog's not making enough money to retire my husband, or, I would like to retire my husband. So I wrote this book and never thinking that this would be something that I talked about publicly. So I thought it was more just meant for my friends, but I put it out there, self-published it, put it on Amazon. It went to number 2 on Amazon the day it came out, of all books. It was crazy. But there was just a need for this information. People were wondering, how do you do this? And so from there, I thought I was going to be done. I thought the book would be everything I would ever say about blogging. But as it turns out, it definitely wasn't. And I had so many people asking for more information that the following year, in 2014, I actually launched a course that is called Elite Blog Academy. And the idea for Elite Blog Academy is to teach you step by step how to start and grow a successful online business. And so now we've had over 11,000 students go through Elite Blog Academy, which has been pretty cool.
That's very cool. That's very, very, very cool. I might need to go through that myself. What I want to get into the book a little bit that we wanted to talk about today. But first, I want to ask you, what so many people out there, I think, are overwhelmed, and you talk about that a little bit. Where do you, if you're feeling that way, if you're, where do you start in trying to slow down everything that's going on around you so that you can bring kind of calm to your life and you can make things where you can get to a place where you don't feel that overwhelmed? Where do people start?
That's a great question. And it's actually a question that I get asked all the time. Is where do I start? I don't even know where to begin. And I think that to me, there's almost like a hierarchy of needs when it comes to overwhelm and fixing overwhelm in your life. And I'm one of those people. I'm a huge believer in setting big goals. I love talking about business. I love talking about business strategy with people. Like, I can nerd out with you on that all day long. But sometimes you're not there yet. Sometimes you're not ready to start going and diving deep into setting all of these big goals for your life and your career and all those things, because like you're barely able to function on a day-to-day level. So my suggestion, I feel like the hierarchy of needs is, first, you got to get your basic needs met, right? You've got to make sure that you are feeling like you have enough energy, which means eating well or exercising regularly or getting enough sleep, those kind of basic life needs for women. And my audience is a lot of women, and especially a lot of moms. I find that, I love talking about big goals and starting a business and doing things like that. But if those moms are still worrying about how they're going to keep their house clean and get dinner on the table tonight, they have a really hard time thinking about anything bigger beyond just the daily tornado. Right. So you've got to learn how to get a handle on the daily tornado stuff that happens. And sometimes that is a matter of just creating better habits. Sometimes it's a matter of saying, okay, what is the thing that is causing the most stress in my life? And how can I create solutions for this particular thing right there? And so that's a lot of the stuff that we actually do at Elite, or at Living Well Spending Less, is we provide practical solutions for everyday overwhelm. So it's literally things like how to get dinner on the table faster, how to clean your house faster, how to spend less time on all those things that you have to do, so that there's more time and energy for the things you actually want to do. Because the next step in that is, then once you get a handle on those day-to-day basics, is really nailing down your productivity and getting a good system in place for being more productive and making the most, because we all get the same 24 hours in a day, right? There's no way around that. So when you look at people who seem to be very productive and who are just crushing it in life, and you're like, why can't I be more like that? What do they have that I don't? Chances are there's a lot of choices that they're making with their time that you're not making right now. So It's a matter of deciding what things are most important to you, and how are you going to break those things down? So those things that you really want to do, how are you going to make sure that you're dedicating time to those things every single day? Because what happens for so many of us is that we have these big things in life that we want to do, and yet they seem so big and so far away that we never make them a daily priority. Because the things that feel like the daily priority are the things that feel the most urgent. That inbox full of emails that just keeps coming, or all of these projects that are due, or all the things, or the meetings, or the this or the that, or whatever it is that's on our schedule that's filling up our time right now, that we never actually make the time for these bigger things, because those don't feel urgent. But if you don't make those important things a bigger priority than the urgent things, you'll never actually get to the place that you want to be. So I know that the people who are out there getting things done and really accomplishing big things in their life are the people that are consistently willing to make the important a bigger priority than the urgent. I call them A tasks versus B tasks. So B tasks are the daily tornado things. So the things that are always going to come up and they're always going to feel like the most important thing, but they're actually not. So you have to put your A tasks first. And then from there, once you've got the productivity thing in there, I think the next step in the hierarchy is motivation. Because what happens is that even when we start to feel like, oh my gosh, I can do this, or I'm really excited, or you listen to a great podcast, or you listen to a great interview, or you go to a conference, or you get this motivation, or you get this kind of fired up feeling. You go home, you get back into your regular life, and it just kind of fades away, right? So we have to find a way in our day-to-day life to stay motivated and to keep filling up and keep recharging that energy button, because it will always fade away, because we get into the messy middle of whatever thing that we're trying to do in our life, and it feels hard and it feels like a struggle. And then we, instead of keeping going through the hard part, we give up and we start over, and we just keep starting over again and again and again, which only leads to more overwhelm.
It does. And you're absolutely right. All the successful people that I work with and I know, I mean, they're just so militant almost about their time, right? And really choosing the important stuff versus, like you said, the tornado stuff, the stuff that comes along, right? They're very good at choosing what is important and what's not.
Yes.
And really being strict about that in their daily lives, and they've almost systemized it to a certain extent.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, to be totally honest, like my day is structured out so like block by block by block. I call it time blocking. And
so I do the same thing.
Do all of my time blocking on the Friday before, like the Friday of the week before, because I like to go in the weekend knowing that I have a plan for the coming week. And when my time blocks are set, like that's it. You don't get to get on my schedule after that. Those are usually appointments with myself, because I'm not just blocking time, like appointments with other people. I think sometimes, especially for a lot of us who tend to be have more people pleasing personalities, you will treat an appointment or a meeting with someone else. You will stick to that and you will show up and you'll be on time, but you don't treat appointments with yourself or your own priorities with as much importance, and you don't give yourself the same respect that you give to other people. And so you have to be, but if you actually want to get stuff done, big stuff, sometimes I will block out entire days just for thinking or for strategy or for working on some big problem. And it doesn't feel like that's actually productive, because it's not dealing with all the urgent stuff. And yet it's the most productive, because that's how I get those big things done in my life.
Now, I have the worst case of ADD in the world. And so if I don't do that, absolutely, I agree with you 100%. If I don't do that, I'm off, down some non-productive rabbit hole, right?
It's so easy to do. And and my husband looks at my schedule and it actually causes him anxiety, because it is so rigid and so set in stone. And I actually have to like block out, like, okay, this is family unstructured time, because he doesn't like that, the structure. But even then I'm like, okay, I think we should have like a little bit of a plan. Can we have a little bit of a plan for what we're going to do right now? But it does truly, I think it takes some getting used to get it to the point. But then also constantly, I actually I don't know if you do this too, I color code my schedule by task type. So everything has different colors. And one of the jobs of one of my assistants is to look at those color blocks at the end of the week and note the percentage of valuable activities versus not valuable activities. So I've explained to her, like, these colors are good. These colors are genius zone activities. These are non-genius zone activities. And so if we see a week that was spent doing not as productive stuff, maybe I got stuck in email or admin, that's when we say, okay, why did this happen? What needs to happen in order to make sure that I'm spending 95% of my time doing the things that only I can do, the things that are the best and highest use of my time? Because otherwise there's no way to get it all done. There just truly isn't.
No, that's brilliant advice. We got to switch to the book, because we could talk about this stuff all day. Do It Scared. I want to talk about. I'm fascinated by your take on fear and how we push past it, and I had never thought about fear in the way that you sort of outlined it in the book, and you talk about 7 fear archetypes. And I never really thought about it because I'm the procrastinator type.
Are you?
but I figured that out, which was, thank you for that. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So the fear archetypes, this all came about, I've noticed fear has been such a big part of my life, and this do it scared mantra has been such a big part of my life, my entire adult life, ever since coming through that depression. And so do it scared was sort of a mantra that I would share with my community a lot, and something that they really grasped onto and connected with. And I would notice again and again and again that so often when somebody seemed to be having a block, and you do coaching, so you probably notice this too. So often it was tied to fear, some sort of fear. And it got me really curious. The more stories I started to hear from people, the more I got curious. Just what is this role of fear in our lives? How is it showing up? Is it showing up the same way for everybody? And what can we do about it? And specifically, the kind of fear that I was very interested in is not phobias, not the fear of flying or the fear of snakes, but this fear that holds us back internally. This keeps us from stepping outside of our comfort zone or pursuing our goals and dreams. So I ended up doing this huge research study. It was like an accidental research study. I started by sending out a survey. But when you've got a really big audience, you get a lot of responses.
Feedback, right?
So much data from this survey, over 4,000 responses, that I had to hire a whole team of researchers and psychologists to sort of help me sift through it and make sense of it all. But through all of that, what started to emerge were these patterns for people of how fear was showing up in 7 very distinct ways that we ended up calling the fear archetypes. So the procrastinator archetype is one of them. There's the people pleaser archetype. There's the rule follower, the outcast, the self-doubter, the excuse maker, and the pessimist. And what's interesting about these fear archetypes is that, well, a couple of different things. So we all have a little bit of all of them in us, but so they happen on sort of a continuum. So the higher you score on one of the archetypes, the more likely it is that archetype is actually impacting your life. So you can be a procrastinator and a people pleaser. You might be like 80% for both of those, in which case those are probably both affecting your life quite a bit. Or you could be, have only one that's dominant for you and the rest score really low. For instance, I'm very high in outcast. I think I'm like 90% outcast, but the rest of them are fairly low for me. So we've seen people score high in up to 6 different archetypes at the same time. Wow. But what it tells you is how your fear is actually showing up. And what's interesting about that is that so often the way that our fear is showing up happens subconsciously. We don't actually know that that's what's happening and that's what's going on. So you as a procrastinator, your underlying fear as a procrastinator is this fear of making a mistake. And that often shows up with perfectionism, over research, wanting to plan everything, wanting to tweak things right up until the last minute.
Yep.
Really, the underlying fear is this fear, like, I don't want to get it wrong, right? this is all resonating for you right now. It's actually the most common fear archetype. I think about 35 to 40% of the population
really?
Top archetype. Yeah. And so, but so often, so much of that will show up subconsciously. So you might identify as a perfectionist, which you might even take a little bit of pride in this label as a perfectionist, but you aren't always seeing the negative sides of what's happening. And because a lot of it is happening subconsciously. But as soon as you can start to shine a light on that and understand, oh my gosh, this is my procrastinator fear coming through, that's when what was subconscious becomes conscious. And then that's when you are able to actually do something about it and see the patterns and start to change them. And one of the other really interesting things about the fear archetypes is that every single one of them has positive qualities and negative qualities. So there's something there's a piece of your procrastinator nature, probably a lot of it, that makes you have high attention to detail. You do really high quality work. There's a lot of good things that are serving you, but there's also a piece of it that's not serving you and holding you back. So learning how to deal with your fear archetype is not saying I need to get rid of this part of my personality. I need to use the good stuff, but learn how to mitigate the bad stuff.
Well, yeah, it helps you know why you're making your decisions.
Yes.
Right? It helps you understand why you're doing something, why you're holding that back. And I mean, I totally see it. I mean, but it's good to know. It's good to sort of understand where that's coming from, right? And so you're right, absolutely right. It helps you drive ahead and make decisions. And yeah, I, it helped. I know it helped me understand why I do what I do sometimes.
Yeah, it's amazing. Even through the course of this work, how much I realized that I was still dealing with a lot of fear that I wasn't really even recognizing as fear. I felt like I had done so much work in my life to overcome fear that I was pretty much fearless at that point. But
Right.
it wasn't true, because like I said, I score very high as an outcast. So as an outcast, my deepest fear is rejection. And I started to see the patterns of how much I have let that fear of rejection affect my business. So in my business over the last 10 years, I've always had this sort of pull myself up by my bootstraps mentality, right? I don't need anybody. I'm not going to rely on anybody. I'm not going to ask anybody for help, because I don't want to, I
I did this. I can
do it myself. You don't want to promote me? That's fine. I'll just grow my own audience of 1 million people. Like, that's kind of the attitude that I've had. And in true outcast fashion, outcasts a lot of entrepreneurs are actually outcasts. And they tend to be high achievers. They can either be like delinquents or high achievers. And I think I've had a little bit of both in my life.
Okay.
But what I have really had to work on since starting to see all of this in myself is to realize how much I've been holding myself back by not wanting to ask people for help. I've had great relationships over the years, or I've made great friends and lots of connections over the years. And I never would like reach out to those connections and ask for anything. And so I've had to start being a little bit better about that, which has been hard, but interesting.
That is a hard part of entrepreneurship, because you do have to ask. And if it's not in your nature, that's hard.
Yeah, it is. But it's amazing what comes out of that. Like when you can start to see that. And every time I'm tempted to sort of have that reaction of pulling in and say, no, I don't need to ask anybody for anything. I have to, then that's where having it be conscious is so helpful, because then you can sort of reframe the conversation and that's happening in your mind and go, okay, you know what? This is your outcast coming out. Like, just do it. It's not going to be the end of the world. Just because somebody says no doesn't mean they're rejecting you. It just means they're probably busy. So yeah, it's been really funny to see how that has changed things for me in my own business.
It's just about becoming more self-aware. I mean, that's what this is.
Yes.
Right. It's understanding you. And if you understand you, you can be unstoppable, I think.
It's
really
so helpful. It's so great for understanding other people too. I think there's so many different uses for it. I mean, I've heard from a lot of people. I think we've had like almost 70,000 people take the assessment now. And I've heard from a lot of people who have said this, it's like changed their marriage, because suddenly they've seen their spouse in a whole new light. And it's made them understand why their spouse does the things that they had always up until that point found very aggravating or annoying. Okay. They're suddenly realizing, oh my gosh, that's based in fear. For me, it's actually helped me understand my kids a lot better too, because I can see I have a procrastinator daughter and I have an outcast daughter, and just seeing how they're interacting in their lives has been really interesting also.
I'm gonna have to do this with my kids. I like this. And your team. I mean, you imagine how helpful this would be with your team that you've put together for your business. I mean, understanding how they work. This is incredible.
Very much so. We require anyone who applies for a position at our company to take the fear assessment. It's part of the application process. And it gives us that sort of insight into them, and also allows us to know how to interact with each other. And it allows me, like, I look at being a boss as being a coach, and I'm there to coach and mentor my employees to be their best self. And so when I know I have that extra piece of information about them, I can go, okay, this is an area where I think this is serving you, but this is an area where it's holding you back. So let's see what we can do about that. And that's been a lot of fun too.
That's powerful. What is, you talk a lot about the principles of courage. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So the principles of courage are really just kind of my mantras for life, of just things that you really need to remember. And they do relate to all of the different fear archetypes. You know, one of my mantras is rules are for suckers. And that one is
Like a
one
rebel.
that a lot of times rule followers need to hear and need to remind themselves of, because we can get so caught up in a society of thinking that things always have to be just the way that they are, or if because somebody in authority says something, that's you got to follow that no matter what. But whatever, I think it's really important to employ common sense, especially when it comes to growing a business. And I see this a lot because I deal with primarily online business owners. And what happens is that online business owners love to connect in Facebook groups, and they love to be part of these, online communities.
Right.
So one person will come in and say, "Oh my gosh, there's this new regulation about," and everybody will be all up in arms about this whole thing. Like, "Oh my gosh, I got to do this. I got to change my whole business. I got to do this thing." And I think, oh my gosh, you guys, you need to just chill. And also take everything you hear online with a grain of salt, because consider the source. You don't know who these people are that are giving you advice that you're taking. But anytime somebody in authority starts talking, so my personal mantra, and it's actually our family mantra, is rules are for suckers. And really that's just a reminder to always take everything with a grain of salt. But there's lots of other ones too. No, there are no mistakes, only lessons is another one of my favorite mantras, because that's, I think, so often, especially for procrastinators like yourself, it's easy to be so afraid of making a mistake in life that we don't try, and that we don't do the thing, because we think, oh my gosh, if I screw this up, it's going to be the worst thing ever. But making mistakes is actually part of the process, especially for entrepreneurs. Because anytime you're making a mistake, you're probably learning more than when things go right. That's your opportunity to actually see what doesn't work. And in seeing what doesn't work, you'll learn so much more than seeing what actually does work.
No, you're absolutely right. I had a boss once that said, I wouldn't have hired you unless you'd failed a couple other times, failed a couple in a couple other businesses, it was important for him for you to have learned from failure and to have failed. Right.
So true. Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's amazing. And I that's one of the questions I love to ask prospective employees also. What have you tried at and failed? And people don't they get nervous about talking about that, but sometimes that's where you can get the biggest insights. And it's a pep talk I have to give to my team a lot. Like, hey guys, we're not making enough mistakes right now. So I think we need to be trying more things.
That's
because
right.
if things aren't going wrong, it means that things probably aren't going right either.
What do you think? What role do you think accountability plays in success? And when I say accountability, I mean, how much do you lean on people to help you stay accountable to your goals and to what you want to accomplish? Because for me, if I don't have accountability partners and I don't have somebody else asking me those questions, then I have a tendency to stray. So
yes, most people do. I mean, I think
right.
that's totally natural and normal. In fact, I read a statistic recently. I was just reading something about this, and I'm probably going to butcher the statistic, but it's something like you're 65% more likely to achieve a goal if you tell somebody about the goal. And you are 95% more likely to achieve a goal if you set up regular check-ins with somebody to help you achieve that goal. So that to me is a pretty strong case for accountability and the importance of accountability. And I think it can come in all different ways. This is something that I actually talk about in the book. I have, I call my Truth Club, which is a group of myself and 3 entrepreneur friends that we formed a little peer mastermind about 2 or 3 years ago now. And we meet regularly. We meet once a month on Zoom, and then we try to get together in person. We were actually just together last month in January in Miami. And it's just amazing to have a group of people who you meet with regularly and who will call you out on your stuff. And they will call me out, and likewise, I will call them out. And I think those kind of people in your life will make you so much stronger and so much better, and allow you to do so much more than you could ever do on your own, because they're your biggest cheerleaders, but they're also the people who don't let you sit in excuses. And that's often the kind of accountability that we need. So I'm a huge believer in investing in accountability, also hiring a coach, hiring a mentor, joining a coaching program, because where you put your money in is where what you will actually pay attention to and what you will do, that value. Right, yeah. And once you've invested in it, then you have to take it seriously. And so pay for that accountability, because that will force you to actually keep it. I also find, as a person who has an online presence, and I'm speaking to a lot of people publicly all the time, I find that public accountability is very, very, very.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. This year I committed publicly to running a marathon, and I'm kind of regretting that decision, because now I feel very obligated to continue my training.
And you will have a lot of people who will hold you accountable to that, won't they?
Yes. Believe me, they ask.
How's that training going? I like, you talk about focused action, the term focused action. What does that mean?
I think that so often people struggle with either one of two things. They either struggle coming up with big goals or big ideas or some vision for where they want to go. And they're so focused on whatever's right in front of them that they can't think about the bigger picture. And that's probably about, in my estimation, from the people that I've worked with, I think that's about 75% of people. And then there are people who are more of the visionaries, who do see the big things that they want to do in life, who are able to shoot for these big goals, or to envision these big goals. And yet they really struggle with figuring out how to create the path to get there. It feels so far away that they just get lost in the, I don't even know where to start kind of thing. And that's about 25% of the population. So the problem with both of those things is that one doesn't give you a place to shoot for. And so you just end up spinning around in circles constantly, because you're just doing all the things, and you're on the treadmill, and you're trying to keep up and go through the motions all the time. The other one, you end up on the treadmill too, because it feels so far off that you don't actually know what to do. And so focused action is something that it's a time management system that I call Think Big, Plan Small, which basically means learning how to set these big goals and learning how to allow yourself to think bigger. And that takes practice. And I actually, in Do It Scared, I actually give, some very clear suggestions for how to go through this process of thinking, what do I actually want? And what does that look like? And how can I make it bigger? Because your goals should kind of cause this little bit of flutter in your stomach. If it doesn't make you nervous, it's not a big enough goal. And that's the target. And yet that's not enough. That's only the starting point, because the next step from there is to take that big thing and break it down into manageable pieces. So if you have this big goal for your life, or say my goal, let's take them running a marathon as an example, because that's a great one. It's very personal to me right now. So I have this big goal in my life that at some point I want to run a marathon. So this year I've decided this year is the year I'm going to do it. I'm going to run the New York City Marathon in November. And I have set that as my goal for the year. Okay, so that's my goal for the year. Well, now how do I break that down? What do I have to do this month to get closer to that goal for the year? Because a marathon, you don't get to, if you're not in shape, which I am not, you don't get to just show up on the day of the marathon and run the race. That's never going to happen. And that's basically every big goal. It never happens all at once. It only happens in little chunks. And so I not only then have to break it down into this month, I have to break it down into what am I doing this week to get me closer to the goal? And what am I doing today to get me closer to the goal? And it literally becomes then that decision to go for a run in the morning and to realize that that run this morning that I did, my 25 minutes of running straight, which was like my best run to date, feels like not enough right now. And it's not enough right now. But eventually, over time, over the course of the next 10 months, that is going to add up to being enough to run a marathon. And that's exactly how every big goal works. You have to break it down and make it a priority today, and put running a marathon or running my 25 minutes this morning, that a task had to come before anything else that I did today, even though my goal doesn't happen until November. Does that make sense?
It does. And how do you push yourself? Because you probably didn't want to run this morning.
No.
Nobody wants to go out and run. Maybe if you're strained.
Nope. Never. There's never a moment where I'm like, I would love to go for a run. I hate running. I truly do. I hate all exercise.
How do you push yourself to do that?
I think about the thing. Well, okay, a couple of things. The public accountability, like I said, I was this morning at 4 a.m. when I got up to go for a run. I was really regretting having said publicly that I'm going to run this marathon. So that helps me. But I also getting up in the morning and remembering why I want to do this, remembering why this is important to me, and remembering that thing, this actually matters to me, that I've committed to, because I'm running it with a friend. I've committed it to running with a friend. So that matters to me. I've committed it to my community. That matters to me. But I also it's really important to me, not just from a business perspective, or not just from a personal perspective, that I keep in shape and feel like I look my best, but also from a business perspective. I have realized for myself that when I don't feel good about my body, that I am less willing to say yes to interviews or to speaking engagements, and that actually negatively impacts my business. So I care more about having a great business than I hate running. Does that make sense?
No, but it's using that
stronger than my.
It's using that fear though to an extent, isn't it? It's using that fear,
yeah,
to help drive. I mean,
yeah.
that's the positive of the fear, right?
Yeah, that is the positive part of the fear. So that's where it's really important to understand your motivation and understand your why of why something is important to you. And I think when you're setting big goals, if you are not clear about why something matters to you, then it's probably not a good goal. Because a lot of times we will set goals that we think we're supposed to do, or that are based on other people's expectations. And it's very difficult to stick to those. If I was trying to get in shape because my husband appreciates a girl who's in shape or something like that, if it was for him and not for me, it would probably be very hard for me to stick to that goal. But because my override is wanting my business to succeed and knowing that as the face of my company, I have to also feel confident about making appearances and being in front of people, that is my motivation for getting up in the morning and running, even when I don't feel like it. And I live in Florida. I just want to say this, this is talk about you're doing it scared moments. I live in Florida. So I run at 4 o'clock in the morning. We just moved to this place that's kind of this community that's way out. It's in the middle of a wilderness area. And so there's alligators. There are wild boars, Florida panthers, coyotes, and green iguanas that I am facing every single morning when I'm out there doing my run. Anytime I hear something growling at me, I'm running real fast.
Well, you got to save a little in that tank to be able to sprint.
Yes.
Dodge and weave, right? Well, this has been fantastic, and thank you for sort of spending some time with us today, Ruth. Where can people buy the book, or all the books? Where can they find all of that? And tell us how they can find, because you've got so much that people can take part in from the coaching.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. So I would say that right now, if you want this book, the How to Blog for Profit Without Selling Your Soul book, we're actually doing a special that I'll ship it to you for free. My goal is to get that book in as many people's hands as possible. So you can go to blogacademy.com/book. And all you have to do is enter in your information. It's like $6.95 for shipping. And we'll send you the physical copy of the book for just the cost of shipping. As far as Do It Scared, you can get that on Amazon, or you can find out more information about that, or take the fear archetype at doitscared.com. And all of our different websites are connected to each other. So if you go to one, either eliteblogacademy.com or doitscared.com, you'll actually see links to all the other ones as well.
And we'll put those links on the show so that people can get straight to.
Perfect. Yeah, definitely link to the fear assessment. It's actually free to take the assessment and get your top fear archetype. And then we have a premium upgrade that you can get, find out how you scored on all 7 of the archetypes.
Highly recommend that. It is a great exercise. We'll put the link on that for that definitely. And thank you for spending some time with us today out there at lunchtime or breakfast time or wherever you are. And you can find out the upcoming schedule at powerlunch.live. And you can find the new podcast links that are up. You can find articles on the blog. All of our content is right there for you to take a look and take part in. And I want to thank everybody that joined us online today. A lot of good comments, and appreciate your time. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow. Until then, do some good stuff. Go out and do good work.